field. Let me tell you why the average man could beat most UFC female fighters.
So former UFC fighter Sam Alvey disagrees, and he says that the average man could beat most UFC women's fighters. But does the evidence actually support this? The answer is no. And Sam's argument basically is summed up as the average man is going to be significantly bigger and stronger than the UFC women's fighters. But is this actually true, or is it just an assumption because he doesn't actually understand the levels of the average man? Let's look at the data. So the average man is going to be about 5'8" and range from 175 to 200 pounds. So yes, they're going to be a bit bigger. That's fair enough to say. However, only 24.2% of men engage in physical activity or sports on a regular basis. So it's probably safe to assume that this 24% is the upper quarter of all men when it comes to athletic abilities of any kind. So while it is true that the average man is going to be a bit taller and weigh more than the UFC women's fighters, most of that mass is probably going to be extra fat mass because they're going to be 40 to 50 pounds overweight if they're over 200 pounds. But a better question, is the average man actually going to be stronger than the UFC women's fighters? Let's take a look at some data. So right here we got the squat strength for men at various different weights. We're going to look at the untrained. And to be honest, I think this actually trends at slightly above average even for the untrained because these are people that have actually at least attempted to squat. So they're in that 24%. But look at this. We have to get to 242 pounds before people are squatting 135 pounds. I mean, 300 pounders are only squatting 150 pounds. This is not very strong. Now here is the advanced and elite level women. And I want to show you something. They're getting into the 200s, and at the world record level, they're getting into the 400s. Now this is world record powerlifting, not fighters. But here's the thing. My point is that elite level women's athletes are actually significantly stronger than the average men. The same holds true for deadlift. We look at the untrained men. 200 pounders are only deadlifting 155 to 165 pounds. It's not very impressive. On the women's end, we have the elites. They're deadlifting well over 300 pounds, and at the world record level, they're getting into the 400s and 500s. Then we have bench press, which is the one lift men will disproportionately be just much stronger than women in. And here's the thing. We're getting all the way almost to the 200 pounders before they can bench press 135 pounds. So this average man maybe, just maybe, can bench press 135. Now, bench press is a lift that more women struggle with. Upper body strength is what women tend to struggle with more. But let's look at the advanced and the elite level and the world records. We're getting into the 135, 145, 160. At the elite level, we're getting up to 200 pounds, and at the world record holders, even these really small girls are bench pressing over 2 plates. Now that is just strength, but in other aspects of athleticism, we have speed, power, and other things like that. Do you really think the average man is going to be able to compete with them? Because I know they can't. This is an elite level track athlete, Sha'Carri Richardson. She's not just faster than the average man, she's faster than most male athletes, period, with the exception of men that actually run track or are exceptionally fast in mainstream sports like soccer, football, or etc. To not think that UFC women's athletes are similar in other areas of speed, agility, and power when it comes to fighting would just be absolutely absurd. This isn't even getting into the technical and tactical differences between the average man with zero combat training at all versus a UFC women's fighter. The reality is that at the elite level of women's sports, the women's athletes are probably physically superior on average to the average man, and even quite a few above average men. When we add in the technical and tactical superiority, this doesn't become a contest. It seems that what's going on here is yourself and most other men are assuming that the average man is a much better athlete than he actually is, and then just assuming that they're naturally just going to be physically superior, so they're going to land that lucky punch. Reality is, average man's not punching his way out of a plastic paper bag, yet actually knocking out a UFC women's fighter. Even if they connect, assuming that they can actually produce much power is a pretty bold assumption based on zero evidence.